Something that we've talked about quite a bit on this program is the housing crisis, but it doesn't just affect us here in New Zealand. Apparently, there's a housing crisis in different parts of the world, including across the Tasman in Australia. Joining us on the program now, our Aussie correspondent, Craig Heilmann. Craig, kia ora, nice to see you.
Kia ora, Andrew. Great to see you, mate.
Crisis, what crisis? Now, I know it's difficult for the new generation to get into housing, difficult if not impossible, but that might be great news for Gen Xers like you and me, mate.
Well, that's it. I mean, we're in the downshift phase. We're just at the tail end. I mean, I don't know about you, but my situation is we're at the tail end where kids are still sucking the life out of our resources, but we're getting close to getting rid of them. And so once we do, the theory is in Australia, we will be able to downshift. And we actually culturally are the kind of people who want to downshift because we've always had a better attitude toward work-life balance as Gen Xers.
Yeah.
Baby boomers and the millennials, a little bit different. Us, a little cohort in the middle of those two big groups in our culture. We've had a better attitude about work-life balance. And so we are likely, so says this news report, we are likely to sell our houses, downshift, take the money, spend it on lifestyle and medical care.
Hey, we might need the money in that regard. For those who haven't got the memo on this one, because honestly, I had to almost bust out a calculator to figure out, am I a Gen X or not? What's the cutoff dates for this one? Craig?
64 to 81. So I'm at the older end of it. You're probably at the younger end of it.
I'm probably straight in the middle of that one. And hey, it's the lucky generation from the lucky country. And honestly, it gives an opportunity for those that are younger than us and those older than us to moan about something. Craig,
well, we're
in the sweet spot, right?
We were the smallest generation of the generations alive today in the Western world. We're the smallest group because, unfortunately, things like abortion and were legalised when we were being born. So Australian population growth went from 3.15 kids per adult female with baby boomers down to 1.9 with Gen Xers. That's why we're a small group.
Yeah.
But we're a talented group, mate, and we are fighters.
Not biased at all, but we've got the best of both worlds. We're in that Goldilocks sweet spot, and we're likely to make better decisions for them with the little amount of money that we've got left, right?
This article says that we are going to be the generation that takes power in the 2020s.
Wow.
We're also going to hear it from our parents. Yay. But we're going to take power. We're going to have more prime ministers, leaders of corporations. We're going to get to make the world how we want it. So we've hung around for a long time. Finally, these baby boomers are going away, and it's just us, mate.
If only we weren't too old to do anything about it, Craig. But hey, let's see how we go with that one. Gosh, some disturbing things happening in the Northern Territory. Now, it's been this way for a while, but it seems to be hitting the headlines again and again, particularly talking about that town called Alice Springs, and, some curfews and general misbehaviour.
Yeah, there was a song once. They changed it to a town like Malice.
Oh, yes.
And unfortunately, that's what's going on. It's just becoming uglier and uglier, and the town is just out of control. And you would never believe this, but it really is. And so it doesn't seem to matter even the curfews that are put on to stop people roaming the streets at night. Kids are just out and about doing crazy stuff, and the police seem to have lost control. The government seems to have lost control. It's just a terrible situation. And, from anybody's standpoint, you've got to have sympathy with all parties here because it's a mess.
It kind of looks a little bit like a Fury Road episode. It kind of looks a little bit like Mad Max, not just the landscape, but some of the behaviour as well. Some concerns about the sale of alcohol in that part of the country as well. There's some restrictions at the moment. Some people are saying, hey, let's make these restrictions permanent. We've got to do something to change the landscape.
That's exactly right. And alcohol's been so destructive for our Aboriginal communities and First Nations here in Australia. And it's actually been horrendous. So really the government has to step in here and go, many of these folks are receiving welfare checks from the government, and it's going straight to the local booze shop. Yeah. So really, Alice Springs and towns like that have done best when there was a booze ban.
Yeah. It's a tricky one, though, isn't it? Because to say, okay, well, this ethnic group's allowed to buy alcohol and this one isn't, that gets into some dodgy territory, shall we say. But, hey, when we look at the outcomes for Aboriginal communities, honestly, there's got to be a better way of getting better results.
Yeah, how do we stop people hurting themselves? That's the difficult part. We still let people smoke, don't we? Even though we put big markers
exactly
on the packaging. So look, it's a super difficult social question, obviously. But look, I think you got to look at it, just the damage that's being done to the health of young people and the health of these communities. It's shocking. It's embarrassing, and there has to be a better way.
Has there been a response from the Aboriginal community in the area? Any suggestions about what they see as a good way forward here?
I think, in fairness, they've lost control. It's really young people who have just simply disregarded what their elders are saying, and then they don't feel they're one with the society in which they live either, white Australia, so to speak. So there's really a group of young people that are just disconnected. And I'm reminded always, Andrew, of that story in the Bible, you know, the man that Jesus finds in the tombs who's demon-possessed, and he says, tell me your name. And he says, you know, my name is Legion, for we are many. And I get that sense of young people that are disconnected, not really plugged into a community. They just want to go join a gang. And really what we're seeing is the breakdown of civilization, in a sense, and really the rule of the mob on the street.
Take a generation of disenfranchised
way to connect young people up.
Yeah, take a generation of disenfranchised young people in an isolated community. Just add drugs and alcohol and see what happens. Perhaps
a combustible mix, eh?
Exactly.
Combustible mix.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, a tragic story of a young girl who. I mean, this is an absolutely awful story. I don't know where to begin on this one, but essentially a young lady who passed away whilst her parents were busy praying. What's the details on this one, Craig?
Yeah, so Elizabeth Strew's her name, this young lady. She's a very young girl, and she's been part of what you'd call a cult, really. Now, you know, the head of the cult and her family members, including her father and various other people in the group, are now on charges. They're now in the courts. This thing's dragging its way through court. But basically, she needed medical care, medical assistance. Instead of ringing the ambulance to help her, they decided to call a prayer meeting and pray over her. In fact, when she passed away, lying in her bed, her parents were asleep. I don't know about that Bible verse about staying awake and watching in the garden, but and so it's one of those horrendous stories when religion gets nutty, and instead of people going, look, it's great to pray, but we're also going to seek the very best scientific and medical help we can get. You know, once the messaging around faith gets so confused and so.
So this was their belief, actually, that they didn't need medical attention, that all they needed to do was pray and that God would heal.
God would heal, absolutely. And so it was, you know, it's one of those groups where faith doesn't depend on, you know, any normal resource by which life would normally be sort of navigated. And so very unhelpful. I think very unhelpful is a wider message within our community too, because people often associate these crazy groups with Christians. And
exactly.
Of course,
I was going to ask, how's it being reported in the States? Is it like, oh, here's a nutty faith-based group, or here's even a Christian group?
Faith-based group who are brainwashed, and they're in mind control, which in this case is probably true. But in the case of most of us, it's not true.
Exactly.
And so, unfortunately, the secular media always uses this as an opportunity to say this is the problem with faith-based groups. You know, let's tax them, let's do whatever we need to do to them. It's really problematic. This is a really terrible situation that this particular religious community has dealt with horribly.
I mean, tragic situation, but criminal neglect in this regard. And hey, faith is should be no shield to hide behind in that regard. If people are involved with criminal neglect or abuse of children, then faith or no faith, they should face the full consequences of the law.
Well, the full consequences here, I think they've charged the leader with murder. I think it goes that high. So they're throwing the book at them. But whether these charges stick or not, but that's what's going on.
Some challenging situations across the Tasman. Craig, thanks for the update. Thanks for joining us today.
God bless, my brother. Take care.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.